Okay, well, hi and welcome everybody. I am Lisa Reichert, Career and Professional Development Lead with People and Organization Development, part of the People and Culture Department. And I hope you're all having a great fall semester. And, if you are hoping that it could be going better, then you're in the right place because today's Now Encore series workshop is redesigning your work life, making work work for you. And I am thrilled that our presenter is Kandis Rodgers. And let me share a little bit about Kandis. Kandis is a dedicated career counselor and a certified designing your life coach committed to personal and professional success of individuals across all experiences and career points. Kandis serves in the School of Public Health at UC Berkeley as a career practicum specialist within the RISE, Berkeley Public Health Careers and Leadership Office. Prior to joining the School of Public Health, Kandis provided career counseling to graduate students and managed employer relations at Golden Gate University and supported leadership development and campus diversity initiatives at the Missouri University of Science and Technology. And Kandis is motivated by seeing others achieve their goals and enhancing their communities and serving as an advocate for personal empowerment and social well-being. Her approach is holistic and she embraces the whole person during their continuous journey towards career happiness. Kandis holds a master's degree in education with a focus on higher education counseling and a bachelor's degree in social work, both from Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. Kandis, welcome and thank you for sharing your time and knowledge with us today.
Thank you, Lisa. So happy to be here. So excited to see everyone. As Lisa had mentioned, super just thrilled to be here as part of the Now Encore series. And I'm beyond excited to bring to you redesigning your work life, making work work for you. So as Lisa had mentioned, would love to have you just introduce yourself in the chat box with your name, pronouns, and what is one thing that is putting the lovely in your day. As I mentioned, I got to wake up with some kitty cuddles this morning. And that kind of leads to who I am. Lisa, thank you so much for the great introduction. As Lisa mentioned, I'm the Career and Practicum Specialist in the School of Public Health, and I'm a certified Designing Your Life coach. I have over 8 years experience in career counseling and prior experience in social work, leadership development, and DEI work. And you can see my lovely cat Stella here, who I had those lovely cuddles with. So just a few ground rules and housekeeping as we get started. First off, I really want to encourage you to be authentically and unapologetically you. I try to bring myself into that space all the time. And I think it's really important as we just think about redesigning your work life that we're allowing ourselves to just be who we are. Feel free to share as much or as little as you'd like. So give yourself permission to be vulnerable, but also give yourself permission to just be in this space. And I want to acknowledge that we all have emotions, and work and career may be emotional triggers for some individuals. So feel free to be engaged or just sit back and listen as much as you want. And really give yourself a hug for gifting yourself the time to connect with yourself and just be engaged. So during today's session, I'm really hoping that you'll walk away with a greater understanding of the concept of life design, and also kind of ideas on how to reframe your current state of work, and then also strategies to re-energize and feel unstuck at work. So I'd love to hear from you. What brought you here today? So you'll see here, I'm asking you to engage in this Slido. You can either do the QR code or you can join at slido.com and put in the number. Give me a little brief description of what brought you here today. It could be one word, it could be a feeling, it could be, I don't think you can do like emojis, but if you could do that, emoji is fine too. What brought you here today? We're going to give you a minute to what brought you here today? Energy. We have a couple other individuals typing. Wanting a healthier relationship with work. Wanting to learn more about how to make my work life more fulfilling. Feeling unfulfilled at work and wanting to make the most of all my days. Someone shared, always had a lack of healthy work-life balance. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Seeking more creativity. Not fitting well into the 9-to-5 model of work. Yeah. Desire to stay positively engaged with my work. These are all really great. Awesome. A few more participants typing. More balance with work and life and not fitting into my new department, wanting this new career to be different from my last one. Yeah, these are all, really important things that I think that many of us are feeling. Redesign and rethink. 9-to-5 is hard and want more energy, motivation. Yeah. So I'm hoping that in our conversation today, in our workshop today, that we'll be able to kind of identify and talk about some of these things. And, I definitely encourage you during some of these different portions to bring these up, to talk about these, and to really think about how does the discussions that we're having today, how does that apply to some of the things that you're thinking about. So I'm here today because we really need to have a conversation. Work consumes us. If you work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, 2 weeks for vacation, hopefully, for 40 years, you will have worked 80,000 or more hours. Many of you will average more than 50 hours a week and will work well beyond 50 years, which puts you over, can you believe it or not, 125,000 hours. Almost nothing in your life takes more of your time and energy than work. And yet Gallup poll after Gallup poll indicates that approximately 69% of American workers are disengaged from their work. And globally, the number of workers unhappy at the place where they spend most of their lives is an astonishing 85%. I think we can say that worker disengagement is a severe global issue. So we know unhappiness exists, and there are many reasons why people are unhappy at work. Some people say it's my career. I think I picked the wrong one. Maybe some people say it's the UC system. I never get actual constructive feedback. It's my boss. He or she or they are such a micromanager. Or it's my job. It's so boring. So happiness looks different for everyone, and our happiness may ebb and flow as our career journeys continue and as we navigate life milestones. What I'm hoping to do today is to take that dysfunctional belief you may have of yourself of I'm just a cog in the machine and reframe that to I'm a lever that can impact the machine. And maybe even further to I'm an actual human being, not a machine, and I deserve a creative and interesting job. So let's reflect and get connected with our feelings and just kind of see where we're at. So we're going to put a bit.ly link that will take you to some worksheets that we've created. We're going to put that in the chat box, and we're going to use these for today as we're navigating this discussion. So for this part of our time together, we're going to use slide 2, 3, and 4 in that bit.ly. So we're going to give you a minute to just open that link up and access the worksheet. And before we actually do anything with these worksheets, please make a copy of them for yourself. Since this is a shared document, if you write on that actual worksheet, it will go ahead and it will stay there. So go ahead and make a copy of yourself so that you can have it. All right, so now that you have the link and hopefully you are navigating to opening up the page, we are going to do a little bit of a love, play, work, health worksheet just to get us started. And for anyone that is familiar with designing your life work, and if you're not, that's okay. This is actually part of the original idea around designing your life, really kind of identifying that, you know, are you feeling full on the love meter? Are you feeling full on the play meter? Are you feeling full on the work meter or the health meter? So kind of gauging how much of each are kind of a part of your world right now. So to get started, I ask you to engage in some of this reflection and fill in the squares. You can just highlight it with your mouse and then select a fill color that identifies what this looks like for you right now. So under the current section, what does the amount of love you're feeling or the love that you're engaged in, what level is that at? Same thing with play, same thing with work, and same thing with health. We need to see kind of where we sit, and this includes all factors of our life. So as we're talking about work, we need to understand and recognize that work and love and health and play and life are all intersecting. And sometimes to have a fulfilling love life, we need to make sure work aligns. And to have opportunity to play, we need to make sure work fits around that. So again, fill in those boxes under the current section by highlighting the boxes, filling them in with whatever color pleases you. And once you're done with that, then ask yourself, what would you like it to be? So maybe if you're not feeling like your love meter is full up, maybe revising that and saying, I want my love meter to be full. And it's okay if everything is full. I mean, that's ideal, right? That's what we would want. We'd want to be fulfilled in all of these areas, but thinking of it realistically, right? What would you like that to look like? And so we're just going to take a minute and allow you just a minute to fill this out in your own. And as we're navigating this, you can feel free to put any comments in the chat box of what this process is like for you. If you're, taking the moment to sit down and think about how much play you're actually having at work or having in your life right now, and you're recognizing, wow, the amount of play I'm having is not that high. I was in a meeting earlier this week and somebody was asking, what is the best comedic show or comedic movie that you've seen lately? And I was like, I haven't really watched one. And it made me kind of like sit there and think like, oh, maybe that play portion could increase a little bit if I'm engaging in more opportunities to laugh. So that was a nice reflective pause for me. And so I want to encourage you to do that at this time. And so just for the sake of time and knowing we don't have a lot of time together, I'm going to go ahead and move us on, but please feel free to continue to work on that. So one additional activity I want, or I would like us to kind of kickstart with is recognizing the feelings that are associated with getting our needs met versus not getting our needs met, right? There's so many times and instances when we're doing our work where we feel like, yeah, I'm feeling fulfilled, I'm feeling joy, I'm feeling engaged. And then there are other times when that's not the case. And that happens to all of us. Even those that absolutely love our job, there are moments when we may not feel like our needs are being met. And this is also important to recognize because the better that we are able to recognize what feelings are coming up for us during work will allow us to better understand ourselves and allow us to better communicate to others our needs. So I'd like for you to get to go to the next few slides, and you can see that it will provide you with the a list of different feelings. So a feelings inventory of, feelings that come up for you when you are feeling like you were getting your needs met, and kind of the opposite. So you should be able to feel free to highlight those feelings, whatever are coming up for you. This is your own personal feelings inventory. Maybe reflect on how the week has been going so far, or maybe how did last week go? How are you feeling last week? It's so important for us to check in with ourselves and just say, this is how I'm feeling. And then being able to communicate that and identify words.
We have had a couple of shares here, Kandis. Liza shared, it's been a while since I filled out I believe, Design Your Life dashboard. My play bar is usually on the low side, a trend that holds true today as well. Work always feels very full for me. And also love that you are bringing in the NVC, I believe that's nonviolent communication feelings inventory language here. Thank you, Kandis.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liza, for sharing that. I think it's not something that we technically or typically will think about is what does that dashboard look like for us? And so I'm excited that we're able to kind of talk about those. And yeah, the nonviolent communication, the inventory of feelings is just a really great way to kind of say, even if you're in the moment, you're like, how am I feeling? I'm not even sure. I don't know. I can't give language to it. Being able to kind of go back to these inventories are really great, because then again, it allows you to just have a better understanding of yourself. So thank you, Liza, for sharing that. Does anybody want to pop some feelings in the chat box? What are some feelings that are coming up for you? In all authenticity and full transparency, I was feeling so nervous this morning as I was preparing for this workshop, right? Because as we think about our daily work and what we do on a daily basis and where our strengths lie, I always like to, really focus and really think about the feelings that I'm engaging with. And yeah, so I was feeling very nervous as part of my work today. Of just navigating, getting to work, and then finding a space to be able to do a presentation, and then actually presenting. So yeah. Anybody else want to pop in the chat box how they're feeling today? Miriam, I like your appreciative and the ability to have this class. Thank you for sharing. Liza, you're feeling a combination of excitement and exhaustion today. Brazil, Ulani. Yeah. There's a lot going on. And to think that, for many of us, we are only about 4 or 5 weeks, depending on how you look at it, into the semester. And students are back in full force, and there's so many things going on and so many directions that I'm sure all of you are being pulled. And I also want to recognize and acknowledge that, we're still dealing with a pandemic. We're still navigating remote work, hybrid work, students, and their needs during this time, and all of the other things that have been going on, of, maybe having to take care of family and just navigating COVID. Feeling overwhelmed with a lot of new things happening in my life, but hoping to get to a place of feeling more empowered once I have a better understanding of it all. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for, again, engaging in this kind of warm-up process. I hope we can kind of continue to move forward with these feelings and just staying connected with ourselves as we move along. But I'd love now to maybe dive into some of the nitty-gritty of the redesigning your work life. And so before I could do anything, I really need to kind of give credit where credit is due. So the main concepts that we'll be talking about today are based on the Designing Your Life methodologies. I wish I could say that I came up with the Designing Your Life idea, but I did not. So it's very important that I give credit where credit is due. The core ideas for the Designing Your Life are over 8 years in the making. And it actually all started when Dave Evans asked Bill Burnett to lunch to pitch him an idea about a class to help his product design students find jobs. So right up my alley of helping students find jobs. Fast forward to today, and Dave and Bill actually teach one of the most popular electives on Stanford's campus. They have 2 books, technically 3 with the second edition of the Designing Your Work Life. And they've really worked on these design ideas and exercises again and again to make them more digestible, efficient, actionable, really just being able to kind of put them into play. The Designing Your Life method is actually the subject of 2 PhD theses and is centered on the principles taught in the product design program and the D School or the design school at Stanford. So called design thinking, it is a process and a way of thinking about tough to solve problems. So I'm really excited to be able to dive into it around what design thinking is and how to navigate it. All right, so with today's presentation being focused on design thinking, let's create a basic understanding of what design thinking is. Design thinking is human-centered, which means that it uses evidence of how consumers or humans actually engage with a product or service rather than how someone else or an organization thinks they will engage with it. So to be truly human-centered, designers watch how people use a product or a service and continue to refine the product or service in order to improve the consumer's experience. This is really the kind of that iterative part of design thinking. It favors moving quickly and trying things out, testing things, or what Designing Your Life likes to call prototyping, rather than that endless research or rumination. So this is very different than engineer thinking, which asks you to kind of solve your way forward. It's different than research thinking, which asks you to analyze your way forward. And it's different than business thinking, which asks you to optimize your way forward. Design thinking and the idea around designing your life is all about asking questions, reframing dysfunctional beliefs, and engaging, right? Prototyping, testing. Designers really love questions around, how do I build a career that will make a good living? How do I balance my career with my family? And how can I make a difference in the world? You know, one thing we're not going to talk about today is this idea around understanding your maker map, right? So are you making money, or are you making something that's more creative? And just really assessing how important that is to you. So that's something that you're interested in diving a little more into. I'm happy to talk about that in another offline session. So now I want to kind of encourage you to start thinking like a designer. Design thinking is really a process for solving problems in which we seek to understand the user, challenge assumptions, and redefine problems. It's really in an attempt to identify alternative strategies and solutions that might not be instantly apparent with our initial level of understanding. And it means finding your way from your present reality into a desired future, really an unknown future full of variables we don't control or understand. So when you become the designer of your work life, you can help your boss and maybe your department, maybe UC Berkeley, make your job the job you want. You can design your work life. This is, really to help you design in place at work so you can be a happier and more fulfilled during those 40 or 50 hours a week you spend working without having to change jobs or careers unless you really want to. With there being so many unknowns, you really do have to try things out and discover in practice. So actually doing it what it is that you really want and how to get it. I also want to point out the misconception of everyone should have something they are passionate about. I know as a career counselor, one of my first kind of like, oh, my go-to is I want to be like, what are you passionate about, right? But also recognizing that when we look at data, data tells us that only 20% of the population can identify a singular passion. The rest of us have many things that excite us, or no one thing that rises to a passion. So if somebody asks you, what is your passion, and you're unable to answer it, that's okay. So designers, or in this case, work designers, excuse me, don't think their way forward like we had mentioned. Work designers build their way forward. And in order to do that, you need to understand and begin to cultivate the mindset of a designer. So first off, be curious, ask questions, kind of have that growth mindset of always wanting to learn and discover and engage. Have a bias to action. So always be willing to test things out, to prototype, to always be doing something. When you're sitting there and you're just letting things happen around you, then it's not really you engaging in that design process. Reframing. So we talked about, or I mentioned a few minutes ago about reframing dysfunctional beliefs, right? Really thinking about what are some of our thoughts and is there a way to kind of reframe that? We're going to hit really hard on the reframing today as part of the process. And know that it's a process. So know that there's going to be a lot of iterations that take place, a lot of moving forward and then moving backwards and then kind of going down a different road. But know that this is all part of the process, and that's really okay. And this idea around radical collaboration, the more people that you talk to, the more people that you're engaging, the better, because you're getting so many different viewpoints, perspectives, ideas. And that's really going to just allow you to take in all of this information and be able to test things out and ask questions even more. So really want to emphasize the idea around connecting with other people. And then ultimately storytelling. So how you are able to tell your story is very important. How did you get from point A to point B? And your story is going to become more refined the more that you're working on it. So the story that I used to tell a year ago is very different than the story I tell now, because I'm starting to understand myself more and more with each opportunity that I'm kind of checking in with myself, each opportunity that I'm trying to iterate something new within my own work life. But my ability to tell my story has been so effective, and it allows other people to have a better understanding of the narrative that I'm trying to create. So two things that I'll not be able to get a chance to talk about today that I think is like super real, and I don't want to not acknowledge these things, is the feeling of overwhelm. So the idea that my overwhelm is being overwhelmed, right? And understanding when you are feeling overwhelmed versus you're feeling burnout. Checking in on your level of feeling overwhelmed is super important, and understanding if you're feeling burnout is really important. I encourage that you speak to somebody if you are feeling that you're really burnt out, so that you can kind of navigate those feelings. So I also want to acknowledge that just being overwhelmed is real. And then also with every organization, department, work life structure that exists, there's always power in politics, and understanding that the parts that include influence and authority have really key parts in playing an important factor in the designing your work life that works for you. So, we won't be able to necessarily dive really head on into how you navigate those power and politics. But I want to acknowledge that this actually is an important piece just when thinking about your redesigning your work life. All right, so how often do you find yourself waiting to get there? I always hear, I don't have children myself, but I know my nieces are always in the back saying, are we there yet? When is this going to happen? They're ready for the next big thing. And so I know that it's super prominent. We're always waiting kind of for that magical place. And we wait and we wait. And, we're wanting that place where we will finally be content and happy. And we think once we have a better job or more money or that promotion, we will have finally arrived at the place where things are new and different and magically better. And really the truth is when we live our lives waiting to get somewhere, really the only place is stuck. That's where we get. So one of the first steps to design thinking process is to accept where you are right now. So you're right here, right now. You are in this position, whatever that position is for you, that's where you're at right now. So kind of accepting it. And wherever you are in your work life, whatever job you are doing, it's good enough for now, not forever, for now. So cultivating this attitude doesn't mean that life or work can't get better or that things never change or that you stop learning and growing. Actually, changing your internal narrative to good enough for now makes it possible for everything in our external situation to transform. So when we design our work life, we begin by accepting what is, and then we find small ways to redesign our circumstances. We get curious, we talk to people, we try stuff, and we start telling a new story. During that process, we find ourselves more engaged and more energized, all from adopting this point of view that what we have is good enough for now, not forever, but for now. So I'm going to engage us in another activity. This should be the last worksheet that's in your slide deck that Lisa had shared. And we're going to do a little bit of the good work journal. So this might seem like a lot, and I don't think that we have time for you to navigate all of the questions or all of the days, but maybe reflect on yesterday, right? So today's Wednesday, yesterday was Tuesday. So think about, how did your day go yesterday? And ask yourself, what did you learn? What did you initiate? And who did you help? And I'll give you a few minutes, and while you're kind of doing that, I'm going to just talk a little bit about these columns and take you on a little bit of a deeper dive. So for the what did I learn section, reflect on your day and ask yourself that question. What did I learn? Look for small things, something that you've added to all the things that you already know. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be a new process or a procedure, a new way to make a PowerPoint slide, or something new about Sally in accounting or something. Be on the lookout for what we also call unlearning. So that's when you thought you knew something and then you discovered that it wasn't true. So what did you learn? It could be something as simple as, I learned how to make a simple edit on a Word document, or I learned a new platform, whatever that might be. What did you learn yesterday? And then as we move into the what did I initiate, really consider that, in order to feel like a designer in your job, you want to be creating and initiating things most of the time. It doesn't have to be all the time, but most of the time, right? And when you take it upon yourself to initiate an action, a change, or a new way of doing something, you satisfy your innate need. And this allows you to feel like you have more control over your world. So, pick something small. Maybe it was Sally's birthday and you organized a birthday card for everyone to sign. Or that there is a report that's going to be due, and so you initiated a shared Google Doc for everyone to start compiling their pieces of the report. Whatever that might be, think about what was something I initiated. And lastly, who did I help? So the science is clear. The value of helping others is really impactful. In a Harvard grant study, it was shown that doing something in the service of others had a very strong correlation to long life and happiness. And just like our intrinsic need for initiation, humans have an intrinsic motivation toward relatedness. So this could be as simple as loading the copier with paper before it runs out. Or, yesterday I was in the office and my cubicle mate was running for coffee and had asked the group, does anybody need a cup of coffee? So it might not necessarily be huge, but small gestures are big wins. So I'm going to give you another minute. And think about what your day was like on Tuesday. And does anybody want to share something in the chat box, or you can feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like and share one thing that you learned yesterday. Or maybe one thing that you initiated. Or one person that maybe you helped. All right. And that's okay. We have definitely a lot of insights and thoughts going on. Oh, we have some. So Natalie recently hired some readers for our department for the first time. And yesterday I learned how their timesheets work in the submission process. Small thing, but important for me to understand. Yeah, that's a big win. That's a big win. Liza, yesterday you initiated interviews for a student assistant position and allowed you the opportunities to support and coach students again. So that seems like that's a really nice redesign in a way that we're going to hit upon a little later, but kind of making a little bit of cosmetic changes where you're allowing a new process to either come underneath you or be given to somebody else. And so this sounds like a really nice example of just a way that a little situation change can maybe be a little more fulfilling, it sounds like. Jolie, yesterday I learned that people prefer different communication modes. Yeah, text messaging, WeChat, emails. Miriam, I learned that I can use my event blue card to pay for hotels for my faculty members. Love that. Reminding, Marla's reminding their boss of a new project that they want to take on. Helena, initiate a conversation about how to manage the added workload of myself and my colleagues to hopefully make it an easier, smoother experience. These are really wonderful things that you're adding in here. And as I'm reading these, I can't help but just feel like you are all so engaged already. And maybe you don't even realize it, but you're already so engaged in kind of this redesigning in a way of thinking about initiating conversations, reminding managers, doing interviews for student assistants so that you can work with students more. So you are all doing such a wonderful job already. So thank you for sharing. So as we dive in more and we think about the idea around reframing dysfunctional beliefs, I really want to emphasize that I'm not advising you all to be like sunshine and flowers, and I'm not encouraging you to blindly choose to decide that it's all okay. I don't want you to ignore what might be a really bad work situation, because making the best of a bad situation doesn't necessarily get to the root of the problem. And I don't think it's good to just put a Band-Aid over something, especially if it's a very serious bad situation. So just want to acknowledge that. But when you reframe something, you're actually completely reorganizing how you structure your perception of a situation. So, which of course this means a new point of view or a new focus. And it really can alter how you tailor your attention and deploy your bias to action, or your kind of moving forward in a direction with doing something. So remember, for now actually really implies hope that there might be a better outcome in the future. And it gives us space to test, or what the Design Your Life method likes to call prototyping. And that's how life designers work. They really kind of accept the reality of the situation or the job at hand. You know, they look for a new way to think about something. They look for a reframe. And then by applying that bias to action mindset, they build something, aka the prototype. They learn something after they test it out, and then they do it all over again. So it's kind of like this building up, building your way forward, right? With all of these new ideas and tools and experiences to say, okay, I'm creating this different foundation. What are the blocks that I want to add to this? So it's really all about, you know, taking small steps that eventually set you up for success. So in doing that, we really need to kind of ask ourselves, as we're sitting in our own spaces, what is the problem, right? What problem are we coming across when it comes to what we think about work or our current work situation? Some of you have mentioned some of the things during the Slido word cloud when I had asked you, you know, why are you here? What brought you here? There were some really great examples of maybe what are the problems that are coming up for you. So I ask you to reconnect to that and kind of hold on to that as we move forward, because figuring out which work problem is actually the problem to work on may be one of the most important decisions you make in designing your life. So let me rephrase that again, or restate that. Figuring out which work problem is the actual problem to work on may be one of the most important decisions. And we're going to work on some of these, building up of some of these skills that will contribute to effective problem solving. You know, really identifying, you know, better problem or better ways to kind of like reframe to find a better problem, so that you can continually kind of think about, you know, well, what if we looked at it this way? and thinking about, if you're able to look at it in a different way, then you're able to see a new way to look at the problem at hand. And when you do this, new solutions start percolating to the surface. When you define a problem, you're always kind of putting it in this frame or putting it in a box and working on what's inside the box. So this kind of like zooming in approach. So we definitely want to talk about the zooming in, but then we also want to kind of see how it fits in the zooming out as well. So when we think about your problem being in a box and we're zooming in, I want to share with you this little kind of 3-step process called the MAP, or identifying that minimum action problem. So asking what's going on, zooming in, and then asking in what's really going on, right? Have you ever had a friend or a colleague or anyone where you're like, something's wrong, maybe they're upset about something and they're not really talking about it, and you ask them, what's going on? And they give you an answer and you're like, okay, but what's really going on? You know that there's more to it. You know that there's more underlying it, right? And so that's kind of the approach that we want to take with this, is we want to say, okay, what's going on with you? Or what's going on with the situation at work, or what's going on, and then zooming in to kind of pick away at some of the, I think they like to call it like dramatic, like drama components is what they call it. And we're going to dive into those. But yeah, asking what's going on and then asking what's really going on, all within the 3-step process. So as we think about the zooming in piece, that's really focusing on kind of like stripping out that necessary drama, and asking ourselves what personal biases, presumptive reactions, embedded solutions do we see that has found their way into this problem. And I can't emphasize enough, we are all human. We have emotions, we get frustrated, and sometimes we can make these things can make their way into our how we see a problem or how we see something going on. So also know, there's no judgment in kind of this process. Just want to really emphasize that this is all part of the process. That's why I had us talk about feelings at the very beginning, because we have emotions, and it's so important that we put a word or identify what those emotions are. All right. So let's dive into step number 1. Here is an example. My boss is just a jerk, so I'm never going to get any appreciation around here. Now, I recognize that this might be an over dramatized kind of version, but there are definitely times when we might say this. So I want you to take 3 minutes or a few minutes and write down what your problem is, or what you feel like is going on for you. You don't have to share it at this moment. Just write that down for yourself. Maybe it's, what you had mentioned at the very beginning. But what would you state if somebody were to say, what's going on? What would that look like for you? And so just take a minute and write that down for yourself. All right. So now let's dive into step number 2. We're going to zoom in, like I mentioned. So we're going to zoom in to strip out any of the unnecessary drama. Again, think about personal biases, reactions, embedded solutions, recognizing any emotions that are coming in. So when we say, what are some of the dramatic components that we see in this phrase, we can identify jerk, right? That's a very emotional statement. The word jerk is a character judgment, right? Is the boss, in fact, a jerk, or do they simply not give feedback? And maybe we don't know. Maybe the boss is hardworking, driven, nice to pets, but they're not the best at giving the kind of feedback that's desired in this instance. So the boss is objectively bad at feedback, but we're broadly categorizing them as a jerk, and that doesn't help to find a solution to the problem. So that's one example. So maybe take another few minutes and see if you can zoom in to your statement and seeing if you can identify any of those components that might have emotion engaged with it, that might be more of character judgment or personal bias. And write those down with your what's going on. Right. So I want you to continue to work on that. And now we're going to dive into step 3, which is when you take the insights from step 2 and we reframe how we're describing the problem in a way that defines your new minimum action problem. So this is getting down to that like nitty gritty, right? Like, what is it that we're really trying to figure out? What is it that we're really trying to understand? What is really going on, right? So we did step 1, what is going on? Step 2, we zoom in. And then step 3, we ask, what is really going on? And we create our minimum action problem or our map. So what is really going on? One thought or one minimum action problem, and you can have many, you don't have to have just one, could be my boss rarely gives positive feedback. So how might I receive explicit appreciation from my work from someone else in my organization? So you are taking control of the situation, recognizing, hey, I know my boss is not the best at giving feedback that I need or how I might want to receive it. So what can I do, or how might I be able to navigate this? So that's your minimum action. That's one example of a minimum action problem. How might I receive appreciation from my work? In some ways to navigate that, could be setting up a coffee meeting with other managers, understanding how they give feedback, solicit feedback from your peers. So getting to that minimum action problem allows you then to start creating or start moving forward, start identifying a bias to action. It puts you back in control of the situation. Another example, my boss has many qualities except being appreciative. So how might I get affirmation from other sources from who I respect? This can be through other colleagues, mentors. So this is just another way to maybe reframe after zooming in on what's going on. And lastly, the management approach in my department does not require giving feedback. So how might I reframe work satisfaction as coming from my paycheck and looking for personal appreciation outside the office? So in this example, there was really no, we've gone from really seeing if there's opportunity within the organization to receive kind of that appreciation. But maybe just feeling like you're feeling kind of stuck in that. And so accepting how things are and saying, okay, I recognize that I'm not going to get the feedback from my manager, from my department. So how can I reframe work so it's more engaging or more satisfying? And then getting that personal appreciation outside the office. So I would say that the example number 3 is kind of like probably like the least the map number that I would say is the least rewarding in a way. So definitely map 1 and map 2 are more of navigating and asking what's going on within the organization or within the department, that, so you're still feeling engaged with work. And then also asking yourself, are these emotions stemming from something else? So as we were zooming in, are you feeling these emotions, or is something going on external to work that is making you feel like you're not feeling appreciated or something? But now that you have really kind of that basic understanding of the 3 steps, I encourage you to do these on your own. And, just acknowledging that we only have about 15 minutes left. I would have loved for us to go into breakout rooms and dive into those, but I think with our time being, definitely want to, take the rest of the time to maybe give you a minute to wrap up or think about some additional mapping that you can use for yourself, but encourage you to have these conversations with other people. So, not hesitating to share with friends or colleagues that you feel close to, that you feel like you can have conversations with. It's great. Again, that radical collaboration piece of engaging in conversation and talking to one another, and just saying, hey, like, I feel like the problem was this, but as I zoom in, I'm noticing X, Y, Z. I would love to hear your perspective. What are some other ways that I can think about this problem and reframe it, so that I can have that bias to action and I can kind of engage more in the process of making work for me. So definitely want to encourage this thinking about your map a little more. So now that we have identified your map and, have started kind of that bias to action of thinking how to move forward, definitely want to discuss different ways to design your work so that it fills you more with joy. And I'm hoping we can take this dysfunctional belief of maybe I have a bad job or I don't like my job and I need to quit, and reframe it to there are no bad jobs, just jobs that fit badly. And I can redesign right where I am to make my own good job. So again, not every job is bad. It's just maybe that job doesn't fit with you the way it is right now. So how can we maybe rework it a bit? So I love this. This is a chapter in the Designing Your Work Life book. I forgot I should also share. This is a great book, and I encourage you to check it out. But as part of this overall kind of redesign, I want to encourage you to look at this in 4 different ways to kind of redesign your work life. So I'm going to go through these in more detail. But the first one is reframe and re-enlist. We've been talking a lot about reframing, remodel, relocate, and reinvent. So all of these are talking about you staying in your current organization. So when I say relocate, I don't mean move to another state. It's just another way of kind of looking at how you can stay within your organization, and just maybe pivoting a little. So let's take a look at these a little further in detail. So with the reframe and re-enlist, some changes have to be made, but those changes are made by you. Reframing the relationship that you have with your job that enables you to successfully kind of re-enlist and go forward more happily will allow you to just kind of feel more engaged and rethink about how things are kind of situated within your current position. Again, we always kind of talk about like accepting where you're at right now. So acknowledging, yes, this is where I'm at right now. I accept it. So now I'm going to move forward and take action. Identify new sources of why that you can use as your rationale for your job. So maybe the reason why you had initially felt engaged with your work no longer exists. Maybe your position has changed a little, your duties, some things that were going on has shifted a little. So it could just be re-identifying of that why. What motivates you? What part of the position are you really enjoying? What is it that you really like maybe about the position or the company? And kind of taking this mindset allows you to re-enlist and then live into it. So it's all about how to make the best of a difficult situation. And I want to emphasize that it doesn't always work and it doesn't always last, right? I again don't want to make it all butterflies and bunnies and rainbows. But sometimes when you reframe something, doesn't mean that it's going to last forever and that it's going to stay that way. So just also want to acknowledge that sometimes this reframing may need another reframe, right? It all depends on where you're at in your current phase of life, in your current milestone of life, if you want to stick with this position, but just maybe want to reframe it to make it good enough for now, right? That for now, not forever, just for now. Then as we think of remodeling, I love this one. This one's fun to me. You can kind of give your current job an overhaul and get a different take on your position by making either cosmetic changes or maybe structural changes. So cosmetic changes are usually done without really getting much of if any permission from leadership, from your managers, while structural changes may be a bit bigger and more involved. So think of it as like a house makeover. The cosmetic changes are more like painting, new carpet, and the structural changes are like, you're going to knock down a wall. So first, you must accept where you're at. What is that new reality for you? What is going on? Second, I really encourage you to identify your strengths. This could possibly be done using something like a Clifton Strengths Finder, or an assessment to just acknowledge, what do you bring or what do you excel at? And also identify what is not working for you, what's not giving you joy, and see if there's opportunity to rearrange. So for example, if there's a part of your job that just feels like it's really burdening you or bringing you down, or if you'd like to see something incorporated into your position to bring you more joy, seeing if there's opportunity for another area of your department to work on something, or for you to take on responsibility for something. So that's kind of those structural changes. And then relocate or reinvent. So these two strategies are put together because they're really two variations on the same theme, which simply put is searching for a new job inside your existing company. So with relocate, you're usually making like a sideways move that you can slide into from where you're at without a lot of preparation or retraining. It's usually, you're doing something similar in your one position, and you are wanting to maybe use some of the similar transferable skills, or working with similar student population or whatever that might be, but you'll be utilizing a lot of those same skills, and you can kind of in a way create that story of when you're talking to somebody, right? That storytelling piece that we talked about earlier of how you're able to utilize some of those same skills in this new position. Reinvent, on the other hand, excuse me, is more in making a bigger shift. So when it's really focused on kind of like identifying maybe your prior experience and understanding that it's not as transferable. So you're going to have to make some serious investments into preparing or retraining to get that job. So, this could be, additional education, certifications, things like that. This tends to be, a little bit harder, but it's easier to do in a company where they already like and trust you than versus jumping into a whole new company as well as a whole new career track. So that's why we say the relocate or reinvent are kind of very similar because they use the same simple 4-step process of getting curious, talking to people, trying stuff, really engaging in conversation to see, is it the best for me to relocate, for me to move sideways, use some of the same transferable skills, maybe just work in a different arena, or do I want to reinvent myself? So always kind of engaging in those conversations are really important. And then I just want to also emphasize that, being honest with yourself is really important about your situation. So doing your homework, and really understanding what's required of the job change that you want to make. And as always, I just want to emphasize that, excuse me, as a career counselor, and when I'm working with students or when I'm working with clients, their happiness is of the utmost importance to me. And by you sitting in this space, your happiness is really important to me. So you need to find your happiness. And that means that sometimes a redesign, it does not work. A redesign is not the best option for you. And we are humans. We should have growth mindsets, continuous growth mindsets. And this also means acknowledging that none of these strategies may work and it's time to move on to another place. And that's okay. I'm not here to tell you to stay in your current, organization forever. But there are many ways to quit well and design your way out of a job. So we won't be able to get to these today, but if you feel like this might be you, Bill and Dave from the Designing Your Life suggest to reframe quitting as a chance for you to author a great final chapter for your old job en route to writing the first great chapter in your next. So I ask you, what's next for you? What is the one thing you plan to do after this workshop? And I'd love for you to go ahead and put that in the chat box as we wrap up today. What is your next step? What is that action that you're going to do? Remember, as a life designer, the bias to action is super important. Christina, do weekly check-ins with myself with the LWPH dashboard. Love that. Reframe and readjust. Liza, yeah, using that map process. And you can actually use this map process outside of work. I do this all the time for personal things where I'm like, I'm thinking this way. Let me stop, let me zoom in. So yes. And I also want to just give a shout out to Lisa and her team. And Lisa, I don't want to, share things on your end, but definitely want to encourage you all to engage with Lisa and her team just around all things, career, professional development. Lisa is a phenomenal resource. So with that, I just want to be mindful of time. I am so thankful for your time and energy today. And yeah, I will end there. Happy to answer any questions. Feel free to please email me. You can find me on the Berkeley email system. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Kandis, for taking your time to put together this wonderful presentation with these great strategies using the Design Your Life concepts and walking us through these really helpful exercises and ways to reframe and strategize. And thanks for giving a shout out to our programs. And I will follow up with everybody and share some resources that can support everybody to reframe or redesign or develop additional skills. So I'll be sending that in a follow-up email with the slide deck and the evaluation link. And so thank you all for being here and for engaging. And again, Kandis, thanks for taking your time out of your regular work life to be here and to support your staff colleagues. Really appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
I will stop recording.